Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
I've been doing this podcast since September of 2012, and boy, are my lips tired.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And Jody Lynn cannot join us today. She's dealing with some personal issues, but she will be returning to us next week. But this week, I'm joined by Jessica Taylor, who is a woman who has been through quite a challenging life in many ways, starting when she was quite young, and she's had to navigate some byways and highways that most of us never even consider as a possibility. She's had to deal with them with her everyday life, and she's come out the other side and has a whole bunch of stuff to share with us about it. So Jessica, first of all, welcome to the program, and how are you today?
Thank you. Well, I'm feeling pretty good myself, but I've a brand new laptop, and it's very modern technology.
Yes.
Going on 88-year-old here.
Okay, well, you're doing very well then.
I'm not like something that never happened before, like my fingerprint to get it started. I don't know if yours works that way. I couldn't believe it. What is this?
Modern technology.
I know. I thought this kind of thing only happens with the government, you know,
or in the movies.
fingerprints.
Well, we're glad you can make it. That's the most important thing. But we need to start the conversation by talking about what happened to you all those years ago, because that's really where it all starts. And until the audience understands that, they really won't understand what we're talking about. So lay out the story for us.
Well, I usually start by explaining what happened to me and how I described it. When I was out on business for my cosmetic studio in 1969, November 15, I wrote that suddenly I was falling through the air like a diver entering a swimming pool, but this pool was empty. What I had thought was a room was in fact the landing at the top of a very steep flight of stairs. I fell for what seemed like an eternity, and then my right hip bounced off something hard. I later learned that that was the bottom step. While my right hip bounced off the step, my head smashed against a 12-inch thick steel-plated door 15 steps down.
Wow.
So unfortunately, my skull was fractured, 2.5-inch fracture on the right side of my skull. And all I was doing was just going to pick up supplies at a premises that I had never been to before. I just had a sales rep representing the place. And when he opened the door to let me in, he had to reach way down, long way to get the light on. But I had been looking at picture window to the right of that door, which was hairdressing suppliers, and all of the hairdressing equipments I was looking at in the light. So I assumed that when the door to the left of it was opened, and there'd be a light, I was on ground level.
Wow.
But I wasn't. That's where the staircase was.
Yeah. So
in total
you
pitch darkness.
Pretty severely injured. And I guess the first miracle is that you survived that. I know you had a lot of help in order to make that survival happen, but you did survive it. But it also left you with some pretty severe challenges.
Unbelievable challenges. Like, for starters, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my husband or my 2 daughters. I was sent to the hospital, and there was no MRI or CAT scan in that hospital in Toronto.
Right.
That was a tragedy. Like being left with undetected brain injury, for starters.
Wow.
And but unfortunately,
and it was at a time too. I mean, to be fair, it was at a time when those technologies were pretty rare, pretty new. It wasn't like they were readily
Yeah,
available at that point. So
yeah,
you were dealing with an older version of medicine.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And of course, we were new immigrants to Canada, so we didn't have hospital insurance.
Oh, okay.
I had to be taken home 2 weeks, in 2 weeks' time. Um, and that's where a lot of the tragedy took place as well. I didn't know anything. The slate was wiped clean. My my all memory of everything in my life and what life was about was gone totally.
Yeah.
All memory was gone. Um, I I literally had to start all over again.
Yeah. Basically learning everything from scratch.
Yeah, learning exactly. Yeah. Um, and I turned to actually hate houses, which goes into the paranormal, why that happened. A lot of paranormal happened to me after that injury. And I stayed in bed in the house. It was a rented house that we had. Um, and I stayed in bed from the 2 weeks after the injury, right, that was November, right through until late January. I couldn't get up out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow, that's a long stay.
yeah,
And you mentioned that there were a number of paranormal things happened. Talk about that for a moment, if you can.
yeah, that was the amazing thing that happened as well. Um, I'd be sitting on a chair, and I'd put my hands on the seat of the chair, either side, like clinging onto it like mad, like really
Mm-hmm.
clinging onto it. I had
Okay.
no idea why I was doing this, but
Mm.
years later, um, a, a person who had studied spirituality said, "You were grounding yourself, Jessica. You
That
were
makes
going
sense.
to zoom out there.
Mm-hmm.
Metaphysically, you were going to zoom out, and you were stopping yourself from doing this."
Oh, okay.
That was just one of the things. Um, then I had this amazing third eye experience
Okay.
in the middle of the forest.
Right.
That one I'll read from my book as well, because it's so
Okay.
hard to describe
Sure.
what that was. Um, the vision appeared to be a mini TV series with real life people moving about. They were so miniature and were with such detail that it was an astonishing phenomenon. The scene was that of 20 women, myself included, standing at the bottom of some massive steps leading to a big white building in what appeared to be in the US. Tall pillars stood at the top of the steps. A photographer was taking photos of us, and we were all very cheerful. What was most astonishing was the detail of the clothing and facial features. I could clearly see our tiny lips moving as we spoke to each other. I could even see our eyes blinking. I will never forget this experience, and I would love to hear from others who have had such a vision. I
Mm.
actually corresponded with the late Dr. Ian Stevenson. He informed me that the word to describe this image is hypnagogic.
Okay.
Hypnagogic. But he said when that was people in psychiatric wards sometimes had that vision.
Interesting. Okay.
And yeah, so it was put down to a medical problem,
Right.
given tablets,
Right.
nothing to do with the paranormal. Um,
So you had to essentially deal with a disconnect between what you were experiencing in the quote real world unquote and what you were experiencing in the metaphysical world, and trying to figure out some way to make sense of that duality.
yeah, I, I seem to wake up into the metaphysical world. I didn't know the reality of this world,
Okay.
that everybody knows. I didn't know, and everything again being foreign to me, like having not able to cook or dress properly or anything like that. There's
It
one
sounds like a
good
very
thing about
disorienting experience. It sounds like an experience that would just kind of throw you off balance, and you're just struggling forever to get back onto balance.
yeah, I mean, you imagine you don't know who you are, don't know about life or anything else. All of a sudden, this metaphysical world jumps in. And to me, it was like going to be living on another planet
Mm,
where you knew nobody or were totally foreign to it. That's all
right.
I can say. And
Yeah.
I seem to remain on that. And I think, I don't know why, if that was the reason that it caused me to find it difficult with the reality of real life
Mm-hmm.
on the physical dimension. Um, but then another thing that happened in the paranormal sense of paranormal was the so-called sunspin.
Okay.
Um, well, that was really frightening. I looked out my window and it looked like the sun was falling from the
Mm,
sky. And we know that that's impossible, but that's what it looked like. And I was
mhm,
right beside it and looking at it in reality, like how it really is.
mhm,
One big, massive, flaming planet, just
right.
huge flames coming out of it. And then I started talking to people about that and was told that yes, there are people in Bosnia and Fatima who had the same experience. That's
Mm,
been recorded in history.
okay.
And what my conclusion was after my study, as you know, I went on then to libraries and studying for 20 years for my second book, A Spiritual Awakening. And it wasn't for a book, it was for me to understand everything and learn again. But what I learned was so amazing, I had to share it in a
Yeah.
book for people.
Sure.
But um,
Do you recall when you were experiencing that metaphorical universe? Do you recall how long you were experiencing it? Did you have any sense of duration?
um, in terms of the physical, looking at the sun, you mean?
No, well, I mean,
Or,
the whole experience. I mean, you were on the steps. You saw yourself as one of many little people. You saw everybody interacting. Then you had the experience with the sun that you just described. There's this whole sequence of events that you experienced in the metaphysical. And I'm wondering if you have any sense of how long durationally that experience lasted.
oh, for years.
For years. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. For those first early years. Um, I mean that sun experience was absolutely phenomenal, and even the third eye experience as well. But long story short, I had to start studying it. Well, it wasn't my own idea to start studying. I met a spiritual man, and he was trying to help me understand, but I was finding it very hard to understand
Sure.
how he was trying to help me.
Yeah.
To
Sure.
understand anything was a nightmare. It was
Hmm.
really, really hard. It I liken it to technology today at almost 88, how hard
Okay.
that is for me.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. That would
I
make
have
sense.
no idea. I cannot. Technology is out of the question for me totally, absolutely out
Hmm.
of the question.
Hmm.
But this man, he said, Jessica, go to the library and start studying. Go to the research room, just start studying. He just seemed to know that I would be led to the right books.
Okay. And were you?
Yes, without
Mm-hmm.
any doubt.
Okay.
The research room led me to, of all things, encyclopedias from the Vatican itself.
Really?
And I heard that a lot of these were taken out of a lot of libraries, but this is a small little library that I was in the Isle of Wight in England. So I was
Okay.
traveling all over the place trying to find who am I, what am I, went back to Ireland
Right.
from Canada to thinking that that's where I was born. Maybe that's where I'll find out who I am. None of
Right.
that worked. But this place that I went to in the Isle of Wight was, again, I was led there, I believe, because they're very spiritual people in the Isle of
Okay.
Wight, totally. It's almost like San Francisco when you get in a cab taxi, they say, "What sign are you?" you know?
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, my memory is still impaired, so I have to turn to notes to remember
I
things.
understand.
It's still impaired. Unfortunately, I had a brain bleed 6 years ago.
Oh,
That didn't help. It
yeah, I'm
just
sure.
wiped out a few more brain cells, as far as I know.
Right.
um,
Well, how about if I try to lead you through some of the thought process so that it makes it easier for you to tell the story?
yeah,
Okay. So you went through this experience for quite some time, and in the meantime, you're it's almost as if part of the time you're living in the metaphysical world, and part of the time you're trying to navigate this world, figuring out who you are.
yeah,
That would be
exactly,
confusing for anybody. I mean, let's be honest. Now, I don't care who you are,
exactly.
that would be confusing. But you
Yeah,
eventually you got some answers along the way, and you were starting to describe how you got some of those answers from the Isle of Wight, which is wonderful. That was great that you were starting to get answers. Can you recall though when it all started to kind of come together and you finally you felt like you had a sort of a holistic view of how everything had functioned, how you'd been through the accident, how you'd had the metaphysical experience, how you had been pursuing your attempt to find out who you were, and it all kind of came together. Do you remember when that happened?
not really,
Not
because
really. Yeah.
everything things happened bit by bit.
Mm-hmm.
I improved more bit by bit. It took years.
Sure.
It took me 16 years. And
So it's one of those things that happened over time, and you couldn't really point to a single instance and say, well, this is where it all happened. It just kind of evolved over time.
no, no, yeah, exactly. But
Right.
when that lovely spiritual man, he was a great artist actually as well, um, said go to the library, and the books literally fell out. Those
Which is wonderful.
Vatican encyclopedias, literally, they were. My readers now and friends say, Jessica, your name was on them. They were waiting for you, because then I started learning the theological science of the
Mhm.
world,
Okay.
which was because I found out that at the Vatican, the word theology actually means the science of the supernatural.
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
that's a far cry from what the dogmas are all about.
Yeah, that's not usually the way it's presented, right? Yeah.
Absolutely not. But
Right.
then I found hidden things that people today don't know about. Like everybody I've spoken to and had, did you know that? No. Did you know something else? Did you know that? Did you know something else? No. And I said, did you ever hear of theurgy? People were once in history called theurgists.
Hmm.
The Roman Emperor Justinian, who banned reincarnation, also banned theurgy. And what it was people tapping into what the church calls God and I call God consciousness,
Okay.
and getting information like being clairvoyant, doing healing. All of these kind of people were called theurgists way back in history. So
Interesting.
I've
I
written a
wasn't aware of
lot of,
that.
yeah, I've written a lot about that subject
Mm.
matter and
Yeah.
pointed out who various people who accomplished, theurgy, who are called theurgists. And I got friendly with a young girl in England, and she said now she's calling herself a theurgist because she finds bodies for the police.
Oh my.
Yeah. So I said, don't people should call themselves I'm a theurgist. Don't say I'm a healer. Don't say I'm a clairvoyant. Don't just say I'm a theurgist and bring it back. That's what
Okay.
I'm hoping my book will do. Bring that back.
It just brought it back for me because I had never heard the word before. So you have introduced it to me successfully and to our audience, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't know anybody. I've met an awful lot of people all over these last 60 years, and nobody has ever heard of it. But then again, we know the Roman emperors way back in history had more control over the priests who started religion,
Oh yeah,
the Roman Catholic religion,
right.
and it was the Roman Emperor Justinian who who put out edicts. I have a list of them in my book, and one of those edicts was that you're not to believe in reincarnation.
Do you have any knowledge or information about why he did this?
Some have said, some of the research I did, some have said that it was all due to his wife, Theodorus,
Oh,
who just, she had nobility killed, and like a priest killed. And when she found out an eye for an eye, a tooth for tooth, comeuppance or reincarnation, and that she got Justinian, her husband, to ban it, thinking that then she'd be okay.
right.
Nothing's going to happen to her in another life for what she did. I found really that Western education is limited with regards to spirituality.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and actually, my book, A Spiritual Awakening, I am so happy to hear people saying, Jessica, you've given me a new perspective on life.
That's good.
And
yeah.
But then
I can say
researched.
that just from my own observation, even though what should we call it, the establishment, if you will, the Western establishment has been loath to make any kind of significant steps forward, the population insists on doing so anyway. Not the whole population, but there's a significant minority of the population that kind of pushes past what the established Western religious foundation allows. So it is happening. It just happens a lot more slowly than it might.
Yeah, but we're at an awakening stage on the planet today. There's no doubt about it.
Yes.
People are turning away from organized dogmas.
And
the dogmas of organized.
Throughout
They're
our
really
lifetime,
turning away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I researched a lot of the famous Greek philosophers and scientists and that. And then I found that Spinoza said God and nature are one reality.
That's true. I studied Spinoza. I remember that.
I love that. And then Desideritas, if I'm pronouncing his name right, Desideritas.
Desiderata, yes.
We are children of the universe. And then I found that there was an ancient religion, another thing people don't know about, and it was called dynamism.
Mm-hmm.
And that their belief was that the phenomena of the universe by some eminent force or energy. The belief was that the natural objects of the world, such as rocks and trees, even had vibrational power. And this is the First Nation belief.
Yeah.
So they go back in time and haven't lost their beliefs.
By the way, as an interesting note to what you just said, science now finally acknowledges that everything vibrates. It took science
I
a few
know
centuries to catch up to that, but they finally got there.
they finally got there. Finally,
Yep.
yeah. But I guess in all of the research that I did, and the most amazing thing that happened was meeting a canon of a retired canon, aged 90, of the Roman Catholic Church.
Hmm.
He actually, well, my readers now and my friends say, Jessica, do you know what he was doing? He was telling me secrets of theology, the science of the supernatural, that he was not allowed to share with his congregation.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
he was. So my friends say, he was confessing to you. He
Yeah,
he
that's a fair
knew
way to describe it. Sure.
he was in, yeah, he was in his final years.
Hmm.
And I mean, how would you feel if you were a priest and you were told things that are metaphysical, totally paranormal, and you're not allowed to share it with people?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You you would, how would you sleep nights? But they had
There are
to
a
do
lot of
this.
people. There are a lot of people of the cloth who experience that. I mean,
Yeah,
they
really.
experience it in a lot of different ways too.
And then he introduced me to another thing people have not heard of, the Vulgate Bible of 400 AD, which has 52 chapters called Ecclesiasticus, which is taken out of all modern Bibles.
Okay.
And it's spelled that Ecclesiasticus that I researched.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, that was meant to be as well. That was meant to be that I would get something like that to share with the public.
Okay. And I'm looking
Um,
these things up as you're talking about them, and for people who are interested, there's a whole Wikipedia article about the Vulgate Bible.
yeah, the Vulgate, yeah. Um, and Ecclesiasticus spells out reincarnation. I have quote after quote after quote from that Bible in my book, A
Hmm.
Spiritual Awakening.
Hmm.
And was, talking with him that made me do years of study on all of the. I have a list of the number of Bibles that exist in the world.
Wow, that's
they're
crazy. That's
never
wild.
they're never ending. And we discussed, he was so sweet. Um, he didn't mind me giving him some of the things that I had researched myself.
Okay.
He wasn't opposed to any of it. He was
Yeah, he
like,
was open to it.
he was very open for it and happy to hear about it as well.
That must have been a
And
wonderful experience to have that conversation because of how receptive he was to it.
yeah, he was just a wonderful man. He's passed now a few years ago and
Uh-huh.
never got to read my book. But
Oh,
I know he's tapping into what's going on. I know that.
sure.
I know
Yeah.
on the other side, as they say.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we discussed God. And when I told him, I said, why is it then that your religion gives the opposite description to the early Hebrew, which is Hebrew was before Christianity, right?
Hmm.
And their terminology was Elohim, and still
Right.
today, Elohim, which is a plural noun and it does not depict a singular God.
Hmm.
So, you know, it,
It's confusing.
yeah, it is. And that when I learned a lot about, well, I realized myself, nobody told me. I thought, wait a minute now, the universe is alive, right? It's got to be
It is.
alive. The universe is alive.
The whole
And
universe is. I totally agree.
yeah, and all life has consciousness.
Exactly.
So the universe will be emits a conscious energy to all life on planet Earth. And this consciousness and its metaphysical energy has to be the source of all creation.
Yes.
humankind and all life. And that's why I call it God consciousness instead of the
Okay.
word God.
Yeah,
Because
sure.
I believe, I just firmly believe that that consciousness that's within, that's how we were created, as far as
Are
I'm
you familiar
concerned.
with Are you familiar with the work of Neville Goddard?
No, that's
Neville
probably one
Goddard
of,
used the same terminology. He referred to it as a God consciousness,
oh my
and
God, somebody
the way
else says that.
and he presented it in a way that takes the main characters and ideas presented in Christian theology, presented in the Bible, and turns it into a metaphor for how God consciousness works. So he presents what
Oh my
are
God,
typically Christian iconic people and turns them into metaphorical concepts as a way of expressing God consciousness.
what is that? What is that writer's name?
His name is Neville, Neville. Last
Yeah,
name Goddard, Goddard.
well, that is because I've often thought by me saying God consciousness for God, people would think I'm absolutely nuts or my brain is still in bad
Well,
shape.
he actually
But
came
to
before you
hear
doing it.
someone like him has said it,
He was a speaker. He traveled throughout, particularly the United States. I think he also went to Canada. He went to a number of different places, but mostly throughout the United States, teaching and preaching mostly in Catholic buildings, but without the
wow,
official approval of the Catholic Church. And he did that from the 1930s to the 1960s.
oh my
and
heavens.
he wrote something on the order of like 8 or 10, 12 books, something like that. I've actually discussed all of those books here on the program with a former co-host named Cindy Chavez. We went through all the books detailed page by page, and they're all pretty similar in terms of what they're talking about. It's a fascinating thing though, because it's pretty much what you're talking about. It's this idea of God consciousness and how it just infuses everything.
And this just came from my own head.
How about that? Yeah.
I just, I was trying to make sense of everything from my metaphysical life to this
Hmm.
physical life. Makes
Hmm.
sense. And that was the only thing that made sense to me whatsoever.
I
And then I
totally
read of
understand.
another great teacher and writer, Carl Gruber. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've
sure.
heard of him,
Yep.
who says, "We are not in the universe, we are the universe." I
Yes.
love those words. So, what I
Yes.
say is, when actor and writer Shirley MacLaine called out, "I am God" on a Malibu beach, she must have known this.
Oh, sure.
You
I'm
know,
sure that's true. Yeah.
she wrote that in her book, um, whatever it was called. I can't remember what it's called now. It was a great
Fascinating.
book.
It's a fascinating thing that you've latched on to, and I love that you wrote about it. I think that's a really fabulous thing that you wrote about it. And it's something that we've talked about quite a bit here on this program over the years. I don't know if you know the history of this program. I started this program in 2012. So I've been doing this for a little over 13 years, about 13 and a half years. And in that time, I've probably done well over 2,200 episodes, and many of them have touched on this topic of what is the nature of the universe, what is the nature of consciousness, what is the nature of life, and so forth. And it's such a fascinating topic to me. One of the things I like to talk about, I haven't done this in a while, but you're giving me the opportunity to talk about it here today. I like to talk about how there are things that I know my mind and my heart tell me that there are things that are conscious. Like I'm holding up a bottle right now, and
Yeah,
that bottle is conscious. Now, I can't begin to understand what it's like to be that conscious bottle, but I now
yeah,
understand that even if I don't understand what it's like to be that bottle, the bottle is still conscious, which is
yeah.
kind of a mind-bending concept, but it really is the truth.
It is the truth, and that's it.
And it's the truth that's hard for humans to grasp. I mean, we're actually today we are experiencing people having to face this through the evolution of artificial intelligence, AI, and people are having to face the idea that AI is conscious, and they're resisting it tremendously because it basically flies in the face of what they have believed and been taught all of their lives.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so what you're
yeah,
talking about has current real world ramifications.
yeah. And I see people Now, we hear more about the word conscious is coming up in focus
Right.
more
Oh
than
yeah.
ever
Oh
now,
yeah.
I love that fact that that's happening. And
Me too.
my belief, again, not only that the consciousness comes from the universe, and that's, the God of the church,
Hmm.
that every single creature, right down to the ant, from humans to creature, have got that conscious energy,
Right.
but on different levels,
Hmm.
depending on our accomplishment. I don't like to say our brain power, but maybe that's part of it.
I hear you. Yeah, I
That maybe
understand
the
what you mean.
humans have more brain power than an ant, but look at what ants can do. Look at what, the animals, they have a form of intelligence as well. All
Oh sure.
life has a form of intelligence,
I
and that
totally
all
agree.
comes from that universal consciousness.
One
Um,
of the ways I like to express this is that people like to say that God created the universe, and I like to amend that by saying, yes, that's true, and we are all God.
yes, yeah, like Shirley MacLaine said, yeah, definitely, there's no doubt about it. But the it's our vibrational frequency. I have, again, my own thoughts that we all have a vibrational frequency that depends on our accomplishment. And then,
Hmm.
didn't I find in the Vulgate, St. Paul actually said the same thing. He
Hmm.
said to one person, but he called it spirit, not consciousness. He called it
Hmm.
spirit. To
Hmm.
one has the ability of speaking a language they have never learned.
Hmm. Hmm.
To one has the power of healing. So,
Hmm.
depending on the degree of what it is we accomplish, we have the highest. And do you know what I believe firmly is that we have to raise that frequency vibration of the self
Hmm. I
in,
think
in
it's all
order to
actually
get
happening.
back to where we came from. If we came from that consciousness, if we want to go back, and I mean, the church says you go back to God. So,
Well, I would propose the idea that we never left.
yeah, well, in spirit and in soul,
Yeah,
yeah,
because we remain connected at all times with that universal energy, and that
yes,
universal energy is the consciousness. That is all of it. That is all that is.
yeah. And one of the things that I was blessed with was I rose above anger, jealousy, greed, hatred, envy, all of those
That's wonderful.
so-called deadly sins. Not
That's
one
wonderful.
day have I ever had an angry word or jealousy or any of those things in
Wow.
all those 60 something years. Not
Wow,
one.
that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's how I help people in my books, at guiding them into raising their frequency and vibration by
Mhm.
going above all of that. We go
Yeah.
above all of those awful negativeness, go above them. Um, and
We
that
often
will
talk
help.
about vibrational frequency here on the program. It's part of the idea behind law of attraction, which is what our original topic was here on the program. Neville Goddard speaks about it in his books. He ties the idea of the God consciousness into vibrational frequency. I don't know if you're familiar with the teachings of Abraham Hicks, but Abraham Hicks does
Yes.
this thing.
Yeah.
There are quite a few teachers actually that teach
Yeah.
about it. So you're
Well,
you're
they're
very much in
wonderful.
alignment with some leading teachers.
They're wonderful teachers.
Hmm.
There. I mean, you're one of them. You're another Neville with what you've been doing on your program. But um, do any of your people talk about the soul and why we have a soul and all the rest of it?
We've kind of touched on it at times, but I don't think, to my satisfaction, that we've identified what we precisely mean by the soul. So I'm very curious to hear what your definition would be.
Oh, that's just mine now. Um, I, I learned that the Buddhists refer to the soul as energy,
Hmm.
and then that made me think. Okay, everything we know is energy. Consciousness has energy. So could the soul possibly be part of our conscious energy.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, ready there for, and the soul there for us so that we can go from one life to another. And
Okay.
and of all things, I found in the Vatican books that they have a word for reincarnation, and it's metempsychosis,
Oh,
metempsychosis.
okay.
And their explanation of that at the Vatican is the passing of the soul from one body to another. Now that
Interesting.
goes against their teachings,
Oh
you know.
yeah, that's not the standard word.
I know, and it confuses me as to why they are hiding things like this. I actually met another man I interviewed who played golf with Vatican officials, and he believed a lot of what we're talking about. And
Hmm.
he asked that of the officials, why are you keeping, like he said, for starters, they told him there's 7 books in the Vatican about Jesus's life in the East. That's
Okay.
not taught. That is not taught. 7
No, it's
books in
not.
that. I'd love to get into that library, I tell you.
I'm sure you would. Yeah.
and um, and when he asked them why, it always makes me cry, to be honest.
Oh,
The answer he got when he asked why is all this being hidden, and that official said to him, because our people are not intelligent enough to understand it.
oh, yeah.
Now, I mean that could be going back like 100 and something years, but bring it
Well,
forward to people today. You don't reply something like that to people today with
there's
high,
also a certain
very high
arrogance in
intelligence.
that viewpoint, right? I mean, when you express something that way, you're demonstrating a conceit that basically says we're so much more intelligent than everybody else, and so that's why they shouldn't be entitled to know the information, which is just plain nonsense.
Yeah. And when I studied people like Pythagoras and Plato and that, I have their quote, the soul may be in one body or another and pass from body to body. Now, these are the giants of thinking in the
Sure.
world. And
Hmm.
then St. Gregory of 590 said it is absolutely necessary that the soul should be healed and purified. And if this does not take place during its life on earth, it must be accomplished in future lives. So there's, those quotes kind of supported my thoughts on all of this.
I'm curious about one thing, and you may not have an answer, but I'll ask you anyway. Do you have any sense of what he meant by purify?
Any sense
Of what he meant when he said that the soul needed to be purified? What did he mean by purify?
we return in another life and get it right, be good people,
So, okay, so in terms
get
of
away from
being a moral
past errors, so-called sins. And that's another thing I established. There was no such word as sin in early biblical scriptures or non-biblical before the Bible. There was no such word as sin. There was a word err,
Mhm.
and that's where to err is, what is it? To err is something
To err is human, to forgive divine.
human. Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. There was no such word. So, and the Canadians for years and years, and going back hundreds of years, have had the word comeuppance
Mhm.
for how what you get, what you give out, you get back.
Right.
You know,
That's true.
yeah, it just makes sense to me. Again, these things started making sense to me. How these things could happen, to
It's a
us.
fast it's a
Just
fascinating thing that I mean, it's tragic that you went through what you went through, and yet look what came out of that. I mean, you went through some really difficult times. It lasted, I think you said 16, 20 years, something like that. But after you came through that, well, first of all, you became stronger. But secondly, you gained insights that I think it's probably safe to say you never would have gained them otherwise.
no, I wouldn't. No way. No.
So it was
Yeah.
in that sense only, it was a very, very tremendous gift that you got.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
Mhm.
and my readers see that as well.
Yeah.
And of course, then we talked about Jesus, and of all things, I started studying, and you probably know about them, the works that are in the Coptic Museum in Cairo called the
Oh, sure.
Hammadi Library, Gospel Scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, in those scriptures, far cry from even the Vulgate, and the Gospels of Mary Magdalene, Paul, Thomas, Philip, and John.
Mm-hmm.
But the Gospel of Thomas, you might know, has 114 sayings directly attributed to Jesus. And he was married. He was a married man.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about, and again, I've discussed in my book about Jesus, the marriage in Cana, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm pronouncing it right.
Okay.
And Jesus was referred to as the bridegroom.
Mm-hmm.
And in those old scriptures, you can see that there's no way, he was married to Mary Magdalene. But
Mm-hmm.
why hide that? Why hide that? My theory is that if they had allowed the priests to marry, it's going to cost them a fortune.
Sure.
Their children have to go to university, go to college.
Oh, yeah.
You know, more cars and the thing, but that would cost them a fortune.
Well, it's hard to
I
maintain a vow of poverty when you're dealing with having to raise a family.
Yeah, that's the only conclusion I can come to. Why would they do that? And
Well, I can think of another reason. I mean, this is something that a lot of people have proposed. It's the idea that people get into these roles of power and they want to maintain their power, and they're willing to do anything to do that, including twist entire teachings around in order to support that power. That's a theory
yeah,
that has resonated throughout the centuries and continues to resonate to this day.
yeah, that word power it's so negative. It
Oh
is
yeah.
such a negative word.
Hmm.
Power and people in general. Um, but then another person that I um, got wind of was a Russian man by the name of Nicholas Notovich. He was riding a donkey. He went to the east because he too was wondering about if Jesus ever lived there or whatever.
Okay.
He was doing his own explanation, and
Sure.
he was riding a donkey and he fell off and broke his neck,
Ooh,
broke his leg. I still get dysphagia now and again, but not
that's all
funny
right. No
ones
problem.
like I used to. Yeah, like what the one dysphagia I had, which everybody laughs at, is I had to go to the hospital for a CAT scan.
Uh-huh.
So I called my friend and said, "Could you ever take me? I don't want to drive that to Cincinnati." "Well, what have you got to go for?" I said, "A cat nap."
That's cute.
Oh, good for you. You're going to the hospital for a cat nap. I wish I could do that. But this man, Nicholas Notovich, he came across an ancient manuscript about a man called Issa.
Mm,
And I've given his entire description of this man in my book, A Spiritual Awakening.
okay.
This man was Jesus,
Oh,
because
okay.
otherwise they had to be two identical people on the planet with the same birth, the same crucifixion, and everything else.
Okay.
And so I've actually given written about that as well
Right, right.
in my story. Um, and to go back to that conscious intelligence that every animal has, I got a lovely book given to me by a friend, by a reader actually, um, and she's called Trees. And of all things, a tree in Egypt that some animal was biting off, eating the leaves. And the tree got angry.
Mm,
How's that for intelligence? And
yeah.
emitted the most disgusting smell and flavor onto the leaves so that the animal never did that anymore.
Interesting.
And the adjoining tree did likewise.
Ah,
even though the animals hadn't been biting the leaves off that tree. I mean, there's countless stories about things like that. You know, how does fruit tree know when to produce fruit? How do they know when to produce flowers and give such beautiful smell? How do the birds know how to migrate without getting lost?
oh yeah,
That consciousness is everywhere.
it
That,
is.
that consciousness and that intelligence of every animal and creature in the world is there.
And it's a wonderful thing too, because what you're really touching upon is all of the evidence that helps us to fully appreciate just how alive and conscious everything is.
I know, but don't you feel that this is what the children should be taught today?
Well,
We
I
shouldn't
mean,
have to
we
go
often
like
have.
you and I did, turn to certain writers and things, or start getting
Mhm,
into a metaphysical frame of thought and
mhm.
thinking things for ourselves. It should be taught today.
We have
Children
a lot
should
of
know.
things in life that we feel should be taught. What the conclusion that I've come to is, yeah, there are a lot of things we could say that we think should be taught, but in the end, you know what? It doesn't really matter because they're going to find out anyway. They can people can try to withhold the information all they want to, but as we talked about earlier, the consciousness is increasing, and when that happens, the information gets out there. It just does. I mean, just to give
Yeah,
you a very small example, I started this program 13 and a half years ago, and at that time, if you said the words law of attraction, you were considered a woo-woo nutcase. Today,
yeah,
everybody
yeah,
uses the phrase. I mean, it's like it's nothing anymore. Nobody gets worked up about it. Nobody considers it to be controversial. It's just considered normal. That's in 13 years. I mean,
yeah,
that's just remarkable. But it
yeah. It
shows
is.
how the evolution happens, the evolution of understanding about how consciousness and life is, that evolution happens regardless of whether it's taught in school. So I don't worry about the fact that it's not taught in school because they're going to find out anyway.
They're going to find out. Yeah, I
Yeah.
should maybe start thinking like that for myself because I get upset about the fact that children don't know. But yet again, look at the accomplishments of 6-year-old and 4-year-old
Oh my goodness. Yes.
today that we couldn't do in my day.
Oh, yes. That's
That
one
we
of the
couldn't do
beauties.
in my
Every
day.
generation knows so much more than the previous generation. It's one of the most wonderful things.
Yes, yeah,
Well, your story and your learning is phenomenal, to say the least. What usually happens when we have these programs is I look up at the clock and I say, "Oh my goodness, the hour's almost up. How did we get here so quickly?" I guess that's not all that unfamiliar to you because you went through whole periods of your life where that you experienced that. But we experience that once a week every time that we're doing a show. But there are a couple
yeah.
things that I want to do before we wrap things up here. First thing I want to do is I imagine you like hearing from other people who have had similar experiences or perhaps have similar stories to tell or just want to learn more about the stories you have to tell. Do you have a way for people to reach out to you?
See, that's what I've just um, got my the people who make my website, right?
Mhm.
I've said put a link there that people can get in touch with me.
Okay.
So my website is jessicaetaylor.org.
Okay.
Um,
So that's
and
probably the best way then.
yeah, because that's what I love. And I love talking to people. I a few people have come to me and I'm just able to really clear the whole picture for them and give them a more holistic attitude to life, you know?
That's wonderful.
And what I find amazing too, though, I can be out of Jessica because I know my higher me,
Mhm.
I I call Yiska.
Okay.
Yiska um, is always how do I but directing this physical Jessica.
Okay.
And that's how I got into the metaphysical as well, I think, in that respect.
That makes
But I
sense.
was leading to something there and lost it. What were we talking about? Oh,
Well,
people
I
coming
was
to me.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, I love that. I love being, and the fact that what amazes them as well, and amazes me myself, the fact that I had so many brain injured cells and was able to write 2 books
Yeah.
and learn so much, because a brain injury is for life. I still
Well,
have a brain injury, and that's it. I've had to accept that I have certain limitations as to what I can do, and stress and everything is a no-no for me. But it's astonishing how I can still function, or did function all over those years, with extensive injured cells, my brain.
sure. Yeah.
That,
Well, I
that,
can give you a little bit of clue that might help pull that together for you.
yeah,
And this actually partly draws from medical science. Medical science has been able to identify that the human heart has more neurons than the human brain does.
yeah,
It
I
has
heard
more,
that recently. Yeah,
right, which means that, and this is also part of what many metaphysical teachings are all about, that the heart is the connection to that higher self you were referring to. So really the main reason why you're able to do this, regardless of what happened to your brain, you still have some brain to work with, but most of this is happening in your heart. Your heart is what's making you able to learn all of this stuff. And
yes,
it's wonderful
yes.
that you've been applying your heart in that way. So congratulations for doing that.
Yeah, thanks. I I find it astonishing myself. Ego was one of the things that went as well as all of the fear. Ego went, fear,
Yeah.
jealousy, hatred, anger. And people, when they say, "How can I raise my frequency?" I tell them that's what to do. Just be compassionate, you know, and be grateful, meditate.
Yes.
Even when we meditate, the scientists have now measured the hertz is 100 hertz
Hmm.
is the frequency of when we meditate. That's
Okay.
how meditation is so important. And to be above all of those things that were just washed out of my mind, um,
It's nice to
to
know that we
do
all
that.
have that access. We don't. First of all, we don't have to go through the same kind of horrible accident you went through. That we still all have
Thank
that
heavens.
access. Yes,
Thank
right.
heavens. I don't know. To be honest, I surprise myself sometimes that I didn't take my life. Like
Oh,
the
sure.
footballers. The poor footballers
Hmm.
who've had brain injury, even with those
Sure.
awful bang on the head,
Right.
and committed suicide. So many of them
Hmm.
commit suicide. I
Hmm.
was suicidal for years, and I
Mm.
slept with barbiturates, uppers and downers, under my
Mhm.
pillow every night.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Um, it was a touch and go. Because I have family, I think that was my main reason for wanting to stay. I thought, I can't do this to my family, I can't do this to family. And something is something was directing me into this life that I have now, was
I
definitely
think that's that higher
directing me
self
into
you were
this.
talking about. Your higher self is what directed you.
Yeah, yes. Yiska.
Yes.
Yiska.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I have one other, I guess you call it a ritual or a tradition that I follow here on the program. It's what I like to do to conclude every program, and it's something I've been doing for the last few years. Well, actually, about 4, 5, maybe even 6 years now. I've been doing this because I noticed now that we're in this 21st century where you have a new laptop and we're able to do this communication. You're in Canada, I'm in the U.S., and it's like we're in each other's
Yeah.
living room. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Because of that and because of how social media works and you're able to write books and I able to do podcasts and so forth, we're sharing information with people that in ways that were impossible 30, 40 years ago, just not even available to us. And now they're
Yes.
every day.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful thing. But one of the things that goes along with that is we're helping people. Surely we're helping them anytime that we're able to talk to them directly. But a lot of the time we're helping people without even knowing who they are and without actually seeing how they're getting benefit from what we're sharing. And it occurred to me that we deserve credit for that. So I make it a practice to say what I'm going to say to you today, Jessica, which is on behalf of those people that you've never met and you've never seen, never will meet, never will see, who you've been helping by sharing your stories, by sharing the teachings that you've gathered over the years, by sharing your books, by sharing this wonderful information. On their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you are making a difference in this world.
Well, thank you for that. It's good to know. And that is why I knew this information hadn't been for my own spiritual growth, even self-growth. It had to be shared with people. Just
Well,
had
keep
to be
sharing
shared
it.
with
You're
people.
doing a wonderful thing. Thank you for sharing your stories with us today. We really appreciate it, and we wish you all the best going forward.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I wish I'd met somebody like you years ago.
Well, we met now. That's the most important thing.
Well, you're one of today's teachers, like Carol, you are, and like this man, Neville. So you're doing a wonderful job. You're doing an absolutely wonderful job.
Well,
And I think you
I've
know a
learned.
lot more than I do.
Well, that just comes from interviewing 2,200 times. That's all that is.
Yeah. But lastly, what I love today, I'm a
What's that?
movie buff because I was a child actor professional in Ireland.
Okay.
So it's show business in my blood, never left. And I am movie buff. I can watch the same movie 60 times and never get bored. It's a
Okay.
good one, like Always or Nell, And
Okay.
what I love is in the script, you hear the word universe instead of God
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's much more
all the
common
time
now.
now. Oh,
Yeah.
the universe has that for you, or the universe did this to
Right.
me, or I'm thrilled that this is happening now.
Yeah. It's exciting.
Yeah, this is really exciting.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today. We wish you all the best going forward. And wow, you're doing a great job, Jessica. Just keep going.
And well, thank you so much. Thank you, Walt, for just being there on the planet,
Oh,
for
my
being
pleasure.
here on our
Let me tell you,
planet.
this is fun. This is why I do this every day. No, I mean, not every day, but this is why I do this every week, 2 or 3 times a week, because this is a blast. I just love doing this. This is
Oh,
great.
that's great. And this is Earth Day. Today is Earth Day.
That's true. It is, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of
Today,
that.
and
But
so
you're right.
the picture behind you is totally depicting that.
I love it.
It's Earth Day.
Oh, I put that out there. That's actually from the Webb telescope. I'll be on the moon taking a picture of the universe, and I put that up behind me to remind myself that the universe has my back.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another expression I hear in films as well. The universe has your back.
That's right.
My office is in my bedroom. That's why you can see part of my bed and my. But I know people say I can have a background, but
Sure.
I don't know how to do it. That's technology. Somebody else has to do it for me.
Well, just ask your daughter. Your daughter's obviously very helpful. She'll be able to help you figure that out.
Yeah.
So thank you
Okay.
very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere, and we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.